Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, Skagway, after all the rock slides that happened last year and the year before, finally thought they had that solved, and they have a new dock on the way, and yeah, it's delayed and it actually broke on the way there. We also have a very popular tourist destination. One of the most popular tourist destinations in the Mediterranean is under environmental threat from a cruise ship, and not the way you think. Plus, Carnival Cruise Line is changing their back-to-back procedures on board that many guests are saying this is going to be a much better idea. Well, over the past couple of years, we've had cruise ships have to skip areas of Alaska because there wasn't enough space in, say, Skagway to dock because of the rock slides that held one of the docks off, and they had to go to other places and rearrange. But Alaska's a really busy place. Tons of cruise ships go there. Like, Princess alone has 8 going there by themselves, let alone every other cruise line that heads to Alaska. Well, they thought that they had this solved. They got the rock slide portion all blocked off and new netting, and they think they've solved that. And they were building a new floating dock. Now, the floating dock was on its way from Washington and headed up through most of the really rough areas, no problems and everything. And then it started to run into a little bit of rough weather as it approached Ketchikan, and had to pull over to the side as it's being towed. They waited a little bit, and then the weather seemed to calm down. And then when they started leaving again, the dock actually broke off into 3 separate pieces. Now, the pieces were able to be recovered and towed back to Skagway, and the people there say that it is repairable, and they're going to be looking into how to do that and getting some engineers to look at it. We're unsure yet if this is going to be done in time for the cruise ship season starting up in April with, I think it's the Norwegian Jewel is the very first cruise ship to show up there, followed by a couple of Carnival ships. And if this persists into May, when the main season of Alaska hits, it could present a problem again for some cruise lines, and they may end up having to reschedule and miss some ports and shorten ports like they did a year ago. So let's hope that they get this dock repaired and everything's going, especially for those people in Skagway who are relying on the cruise ships for their income. Remember, they make, during the cruise season, 90% of their income in some of those cities, coastal cities like Skagway and Ketchikan. 90% of the income comes from cruise ship tourism and tourism in the area. So let's hope that dock gets up and running. Now, we also have Carnival Cruise Line is changing their back-to-back policies. And normally what happens on a back-to-back, you would have to leave the ship, go through customs, and then be escorted back onto the ship. And when you get back on the ship, what they were doing is handing you either a glass of orange juice or a glass of champagne, and they would give you a group souvenir photo of everybody all at once. That was their reward for being back-to-back passengers. However, they're changing that now, and you'll still have to go through customs like we always have to do. However, instead of getting that group photo and getting a drink like champagne or orange juice, remember, depending on the time of day, you may not want champagne or you may not want orange juice. Now they're going to give you a drink voucher that you can use during your cruise for any kind of drink you would want to have. Plus, they're going to give you a photo pass for 1 photo taking during the first night of the cruise, which means you can go to any photographer around the ship as they're taking pictures, get your photo of just you, your loved one, your family, whatever you wish to do, and get that memorable photo instead of the group photo with a bunch of strangers that you really didn't know. So I kind of thought, yeah, you know what, that's kind of a good change for Carnival to do that. Good on them. Next, we also have the Port of Miami is only a couple weeks away from having their shore power fully installed and ready for cruise ships to use, which will mean there'll be a lot less smokestacks going from the cruise ships, shall we say, and a lot of people will be very, very happy to see that, because Miami's, as you know, is either the biggest or the second biggest cruise port, depending on the week. Between them and Orlando, they just keep fighting back and forth between who's going to be the biggest cruise port in the United States. But hooking up to shore power is a good idea. Unfortunately, out of, say, 90 cruise ships, about 34 of them have shore power capability right now, but all the new ships coming online all have shore power capability, so that's a good thing. And as the older ships get phased out and the new ships come in, and yeah, we're going to see the change come over relatively quickly. And even some of the older ships, they're going to be installing shore power on them during dry dock as well, many of the cruise lines. So that's a good thing. Good on Port of Miami for getting that up and running as quickly as they did. Next, let's talk about an environmental impact coming from a cruise ship, of all places, and it's one that you can't sail on. You cannot sail on this cruise ship. That's because it's in about 90 meters of water. And it's that way, 90 meters of water, because this ship is the MSC Diamond, and she sunk back in 2007 when she ran aground near the very popular Mediterranean port of Santorini. Now, ever since then, there have been a big battle, basically, of who's going to raise that ship. And in the meantime, it's been down there like 13 years, and the oil tanks and the water retained, like chemicals and everything that was stored on that ship, are slowly starting to rust away, to the point now where if there's strong winds and rough seas, you're starting to see some oil leakage coming from the ship. And it holds over 500 metric tons of oil still. Could be a huge disaster for Santorini area. Can you imagine a beautiful, pristine white buildings and everything, the beaches of Santorini suddenly being covered in crude oil? Not a good thing. And so even though the government back in 2017 ordered the owners of the cruise ship to pay for the costs, and they're responsible, they have to raise it, it still hasn't even been started because they've been embroiled with legal conflict between the government, the owners, and the insurance companies. None of them want to claim responsibility. But in 2017, the court actually said, yeah, the owners are responsible. So even though they're doing, legal battles of who's going to have to pay for it and everything like this, if it doesn't happen soon, it could spell the end of that area, and it could be an ecological disaster waiting to happen while people fight this stuff out in court. You would think once the government came out and said it is, actually the court came out and said you are responsible at one point, that it doesn't matter who has to pay for it now. They're responsible, they have to pay for it, raise it up, and if they want to get reimbursed from the insurance company or get help from the government, that should all be done later, right? But instead, they've been managing to hold this up in court, and the residences are saying it's getting worse and worse, and even the containment that they've put in that area to keep the oil there has now gotten to the point where it is no longer stopping the oil when it does leak out of there when there's a little bit of rough seas. It's not even stopping that little oil leak, and has nowhere near enough if this ship actually breaks apart and the oil all releases. Now, it becomes even worse because that area is known for seismic activity, earthquakes, and it is kind of in the caldera, and it's kind of on the edge of a big crater, which means if they don't act soon, it could actually slide down in deeper, hundreds and hundreds of feet, And if that happens, chances are all that oil and all the contaminants on board, the lubricants and everything like that, are just going to spill out. And we all know what happens at that. It'll be a blame game, but the people who are going to suffer are the people in Santorini. Well, let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think? Do you think, yeah, somebody, either the government or the European Union, somebody just needs to step in and get that done and worry about who pays for it after it's picked up, before it becomes too late? Well, I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world? Hit that subscribe button. Until next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.